Hey, good evening, everyone. David Cashman here with SEB Housing. This is the information session for the affordable and workforce units at Harmony in Bellingham. It's just 6 o'clock. I don't know if we'll have a few more folks rolling in, so bear with me for a minute. I'm just going to hang out for a minute, see if anyone else joins. And in the next few minutes here, we will get started. I'm going to be sharing my screen and doing a slideshow so that everyone can follow along. I will stop and take questions at the end, but also this is really for your benefit. So please, if you have questions during this presentation, you can just, raise your hand either with the virtual tool or just, say something that you have a question. I'd be happy to stop and have you say that question and answer it. Maybe that other people have the same question. Clay, I see that you're on here. Can you just confirm everyone else got their screen blacked out? Can you just confirm you can hear me and see me and everything's fine so far?
Yep, I can hear you loud and clear and see you fine. Thanks,
Great.
Dave.
Thanks, Clay. And for those of you attending, Clay Williams works on the development team, Eastland Partners. We've worked together on some other projects as well. And I've invited him here tonight to speak a little bit about the development and the units themselves because he knows them far better than I do. So, Clay, let me just start. I'll give a little bit of background here, and then at some point in the next 10 minutes or so, I'll turn it over to you, and you can talk about the units and the development. All right.
Great. Sounds good, Dave. Thanks.
Share my screen. And we'll do. All right, great. Everyone see that all right? Blake, can you just confirm? Just want to make sure is that showing up right on your screen?
Yeah, the presenter view is the one that's coming through on the share, but I can still see everything fine.
Got it. If I was better at Zoom, I would fix that, but I'm just going to move forward.
Yeah, I would say just run.
All right, everyone. So this is Harmony in Bellingham. This is a really interesting affordable housing and workforce housing product because, we work SEB Housing. That's my company. And again, my name is David Cashman. We work on a lot of affordable housing throughout the state of Massachusetts and in a few other states as well. And typically, well, two things. Typically, you don't see 4-bedroom units in these programs. So this is really neat that Eastland is offering 4-bedroom units, which are coveted and very necessary. And there are plenty of people that qualify for these opportunities who want 4 bedrooms. So that's really great to see. Another thing that's a little bit unique about this development is we have units at 3 different income tiers. We've got 3 4-bedroom units at 50% of AMI. That's a really popular offering. Anytime we do lotteries for 50% AMI units, they tend to be extremely popular because there just aren't that many of them in these programs or around the state, and people want them and need them. And obviously those sales prices are, quite a bit below what would be captured on the market rate. And I'm recognizing as I say that I've only remembered to list the sales price for the 50% unit, but don't worry, I'll get to the other ones so you can see those as well. So we've got 3 of those. That's a really nice offering. Again, pretty unusual to see 50% units. What you typically would see in affordable programs and what we work the most on are 80% AMI units. Now, these are a little bit different because per the inclusionary zoning in Bellingham, they do have an income floor. So whereas for the 50% AMI units, it's just an income ceiling. In order to qualify, you need to make less than 50% of AMI, and we'll talk about what that is. For this bracket, we've got a range. So you've got to be between those two, make more than 50% of AMI and less than 80%. And if you fall on either side of that, then unfortunately you wouldn't qualify for that tier. And lastly, what we have here, what I've been calling the workforce units. And those are being made available to households between 80% and 120% of AMI. They're a little bit different because These are purely a creation of the inclusionary zoning in Bellingham. They do not have any state involvement from the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, which does oversee and have approval and involvement rights with respect to these 5 units. But that state agency is not involved with the workforce units, the 2 of them, which are entirely overseen by the town. And there will be some other little differences that I'll talk about on account of that. There is a pretty modest HOA fee of $25 a month for all of these units, regardless what tier you're in. And that goes towards landscaping. Probably one of the most important takeaways you can have from this session is the application deadline is January 9th. This is a full documentation lottery, which means that in addition to the application, you do need to submit supporting documentation in the form of that shows what your income, what your assets are. You're going to need to provide 3 years of most recent tax returns. We've generally been phasing those out, but we are doing that for this lottery. The upside is that if you are in the lottery, you know that you've undergone the sort of full review with SEB, that we've really taken a deep dive and we've made a determination as to your eligibility. When we do what we call no-doc lotteries, you just submit an application and say what your income assets are, and we would enter you based on that. But what you say may not actually be what we would calculate upon a full review. So both have their benefits, but I suppose one downside of the way we're running this one is it's a bigger lift for you to get into the lottery. It requires more time. It requires more effort. You're going to have to track down the different documents to show what your income and assets are. But again, the upside is if you do get that letter of eligibility from SEB Housing, you know that we've reviewed all of that and that we've determined you are eligible, which is a good sign for moving forward after the lottery. One thing I do want to say too is some people ask this. This is not a one bite at the apple type of affair. So it's not like you submit your application and if anything's missing, we issue you a denial notice or anything like that. We will review it. We typically take around 3 business days, sometimes a little, usually less than that, occasionally more than that if we're really busy. And we will let you know kind of the status of our review. And if anything is incomplete, we will let you know in bulleted format exactly what that is. So it really does benefit you to try and get your application in to us as far in advance of January 9th as you can, so that we can review those items and get you a list. And if there are things missing, you can have time to look into those and get whatever may be missing and resubmit it. And I will tell you that, most households submitting documentation to us, whether it's for a homeownership lottery or rental, or even if they're currently in a unit and they're just trying to recertify, most people are missing something. It's very rare that someone would submit a totally complete application on the first try. So you really don't want to wait till January 9th. Get it in as soon as you can. We'll take a look and let you know. And that applies to, even if something might be missing, get it in anyway, because you want to know if we see something that you're not even considering. You can submit your application by email to info@sebhousing.com. Don't worry, you don't need to write this down. It's right on the application itself. You can fax it to us. You can bring it to our office in Needham. We have a 24-hour blue secure Dropbox right outside our office, right when you come up the driveway there. We check it every day, except weekends, and bring it in for processing. You can put it in the postal mail. So really, whatever works for you, we'll take it and we will process it. All right, I'm going to go to the next slide here. So just a bit about us. We're an offsite affordable housing consulting group that gets hired by development teams. We work on projects all over the state of Massachusetts. Perhaps you've applied to a lottery that we've been involved in before, or perhaps maybe even live in a rental unit, an affordable rental unit somewhere that we're involved. We're not actually the owners, we're not the developers, we're not the management teams, but we do get hired by lots of them. We've been doing this work for almost 20 years. And we do try and make the process as sort of easy and transparent as it can be. Now, that's not to say it's easy. There is a lot that goes into qualifying for these programs. And ultimately, if you move forward, there's a lot that goes into buying a home, getting a mortgage pre-approval and then getting a commitment and signing a purchase and sale and ultimately closing. So there's a lot there, but we certainly try our best to be a resource to people who are interested, to applicants, and to try and make the process as accessible as we can. We are your main contact between now and the lottery, which is in January, I think. So, you really won't be, I don't see a reason you'd be connecting with anyone on the development team. They've sort of turned it over to us to be their prime contact on this. And we will stay involved for households after the lottery who ultimately are able to close on units, because we make sure that the different deadlines and benchmarks along the way get hit. So our involvement doesn't end with the lottery, but certainly up to the lottery, we're sort of the main folks you'd be dealing with. If you haven't seen it already, probably many of you have, we do have a website. You can find out more about us. You can find this opportunity listed on there on the affordable housing page. And then you'd go to I want to buy rather than I want to rent. And you will find this opportunity with a little thumbnail and some other information, including the information packet and the application, which can be downloaded straight from our website and completed at your leisure. Best way to get in touch with us is to email info@scbhousing.com. That's really the best. We have an admin staff of 5 who handles all the traffic that comes in, email and phone calls. You can certainly call us. Here's the number right here, 617-782-6900, extension 2. I will tell you, given the volume of properties and number of people who call, it is very difficult for us to answer calls as they come in. So we do ask, and this is very clear in our message, that you leave a message and we try and respond to the message on the same day or next day. Please don't just, if you don't leave a message, we won't know you called. So if you call and you don't get us, please leave a message with your name and contact information, or even including the best times to reach you, and we will call you back. But otherwise, generally speaking, email is best. Before I go to the next slide, I just want to say I'm only seeing a portion. Actually, I guess I do this. I haven't seen anyone raise their hand, but I'm not seeing. I don't know if I'm seeing all 18 people. Oh, they're there. Okay, there we go. So I was going to say I'm not seeing everyone if they've raised their hand, but now I've got it. But still, if you have a question, you want to just call it out, please go ahead. I'll be sure to hear that. Whereas if I'm looking at my screen, I might miss it if you use the hand raising function on Zoom. All right, so that's slide 2. Let's go to slide 3. So here's a few, I've already covered a few topics, but we're going to talk a little bit about these homes and the community in general. And Clay's here, he's the man to kind of go through that in detail. We'll talk about who's eligible, what are the criteria, what are the income limits, the asset limits, what does all of that look like, what are some of the documents you're going to need to provide with respect to those. I'll talk a little bit about the lottery, when that's going to be, how that gets conducted, what gets determined by the lottery, and what that all means. And then we'll talk a little bit about what happens after the lottery and what to expect there. All right, so like I said at the beginning, one of the really neat aspects of this development is we are talking about 4-bedroom units. They each also have 2.5 bathrooms. I've been doing this work for 5+ years now. And it's just rare that we see that, so that's great. I know that that's in demand. And I think we actually did one other lottery in Grafton years ago with Clay's team that also had 4 bedrooms, if I'm remembering correctly. And very few in between. So neat product, a lot of demand. You're not going to see that in many places. These are pretty big units, about 2,500 square feet. They have porches, they have decks, they have 2-car garages, plus surface and driveway parking. So no shortage. If you have more than one car, there's not going to be any shortage of places to park it. The units will come with washer and dryer hookups. All utilities are electric. There'll be high-speed internet and central air conditioning. And you know what, Clay, rather than me going on with this slide, why don't I turn it over to you? You can talk more about the units and the community highlights.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. My name is Clay Williams. I work in permitting and acquisition for Eastland Partners, the developer of this community. I did a lot of the upfront work with the town of Bellingham, kind of getting us to where we are today. So I think, Dave has alluded to probably the most important part here. All of our units that are being offered in this lottery are 4 bedrooms. There's been a huge need for affordable housing for families in Massachusetts. So that's really what we are kind of targeting with this project. To kind of build on what Dave has said, the homes will come with mostly carpet for bedrooms. There will be LVP or luxury vinyl plank flooring in certain areas of the home. There will be tile in the bathrooms. They will all be slab on grade construction, so these homes will not have basements. However, there is attic storage, and as Dave mentioned, big 2-car garage. There's plenty of space for your family and all your things. You'll get a certain set of recessed lighting that comes standard with all of our homes. You'll have granite countertops in the kitchen and stainless steel appliances, which is a huge benefit. These homes will look great. And you'll get a dishwasher. We'll have 2 different color kind of packages that are pre-selected for the home. So it'll either be light or dark, just they're not all exactly the same. And per the regulations from the EOHLC, these homes will look exactly identical to all of the market rate counterparts throughout the community. It's a great location, really close to 495 in downtown Bellingham with a whole bunch of restaurants, shopping. There's access to Boston via commuter rail and Franklin not too far away. It's been a great community for us so far, and we're excited to get some of these units sold to you all. So I'll give it back to you, Dave.
Awesome. Thank you, Clay. And folks, I don't know if you have questions for Clay, now's a great time to ask him. He's here. I don't know if he's planning on staying for the duration, but he's here now. And I would certainly encourage you, if you have any specific questions about the units or community, please ask Clay now. He'll know a lot better than I will. Nothing. Anyone? All right. Well,
Hi, sorry, actually, I have a question.
oh, great. Yeah.
Would it be possible to obtain a copy of the HOA agreement?
Let me check. So the HOA is for irrigation. It is not necessarily for like mowing and planting and things like that. We have a central sprinkler system for the whole community, and that's what your HOA fee includes. I can check on what the language for the HOA is, though.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
And apologies if I misstated that. So good clarification. Thanks, Clay. Any other questions for Clay about the units? Okay, well, they got a great website too, and maybe some of you have already been on there. I poked around there some the other week, and you can see, a lot about the community. So that's a great resource too. Okay, so let me just tell you a little bit about, there's 3 different unit types that are being offered through this lottery. In total, there are 7 units, and I should add there are future phases at this development. The delivery schedule is going to be more than a year, and in that case, it makes sense to break it up. So this is the first installment of units, and there will be a future lottery at some date. I don't know, maybe a year from now, something like that. We'll have to sort of look at construction and how that is going. But there will be another, I think, 6 units. Is that right, Clay? 13 affordable total, I want to say, roughly.
Yeah, for the whole job, there's 16 affordable units.
Okay, 16. Apologies. So this will be for the first 7, and then at some point, there will be another lottery for 9 more affordable workforce units. There are a few different housing styles being offered. In this first tranche, we've got the Layla, the Everly, and the Tucker. And so I've just put out here, and then I'm in the next few slides, I'm going to just kind of give you a quick view of what those look like in the floor plan so you can see them. They are pre-selected for the lots. And so I've just given you a quick rundown here. So the first one, and again, please be mindful, these can change. I don't know if Clay's looking at it right now saying, oh, that's not right. But, new construction, anticipated delivery dates are anticipated, and that can certainly change with realities on the ground. So first one was going to be the Layla. That's a 50% AMI unit. Then the Everly, also 50%. Layla again at 80%. The Tucker at 120%. Tucker at 80%. Everly at 120%. And Tucker at 50%. So let me show you what these look like. So the first one is the Tucker. This is available at all 3 AMI tiers. Okay, so here's your garage. I'll just hold it here for a second. 2,478 square feet. Slab on grade, like Clay said. I'm not going to sort of announce this too much as we go through. I'm just going to sit here and you can take a look. Or maybe I'll say a few things, but you've got your garage here, a mud room, there's a study over here, dining room. We got a great room here with a patio off the back. It's like stairs up to the second floor here. Let's go to the next one. And again, we can make these available, so I won't spend too long on these. But if anyone wants a copy, they can certainly reach out to us, and then we'd be happy to provide those to you so you can kind of spend as much time as you want studying them. All right, so that's the Tucker. Anything you want to add there, Clay, or should I just move on?
I saw somebody asked in the chat, would they have any choices in terms of finishes? All of our finishes are pre-selected for these homes. Eastland Partners is more of a production builder than a custom home builder. So you'll basically get kind of a turnkey unit through this process. Other than that, I think that was a great description of what the unit is, Dave.
Great, thank you. All right, next one is the Layla, also slab on grade. They all are. This one is not available in the workforce program. Okay, just for the 50% and 50 to 80%. Also has the garage, has parking, 2,463 square feet. Here's your garage here. Got a porch here in front, study right behind it. It's like a nice dining space, kitchen, sort of, in the style that's pretty common now. Big, great room. Maybe this is where you put a couch and TV and stuff. Cooking here. Got a nice little deck off the back. Looks like stairs here leading up to the second floor. Got a powder room right here. Let's go up to the next floor here. So you've got your master bedroom here. Looks like 2 different bathrooms over here. Some additional bedrooms. Big walk-in closet. And some mechanical space over there. 1,314 square feet on this floor. And again, happy to provide these. So I recognize, you might want some more time to look through these at your leisure. So please feel free to email us. And I think they might be on our website too. But if not, you can email us and I'm happy to send those over. And then the Everly. All right, so again, 2-car garage. This is available at 50% AMI and 120% AMI, not the 50 to 80. Okay, not the 50 to 80. I think there is the fourth bedroom, so 2,419 square feet. Little porch here in front. Some nice windows here in front. Got your garage here. Little study next to it. I think I've seen studies in all three. Common theme of the great room with a deck off the back. Be nice in the summer. Kind of flows seamlessly into the cooking space and kitchen. A little powder room here and a pantry there. Master bedroom on the first floor here with master bathroom and walk-in closet, and then stairs up to the second floor, which looks like this. And Clay, I think this shows is unfinished, but I'm pretty certain we decided it will be finished. These will all be 4 bedrooms, correct?
Yep, that's correct. Yeah, that will be a finished bedroom with carpeting and a closet and window and all that good stuff.
Great. Okay, so ignore the unfinished. This is a 4th bedroom. All right. So, all right, let's move on to the kind of seeing the units now, learned a bit about the community. Let's talk about who's eligible and sort of the income limits, which is really one of the biggest, probably the biggest, but one of the biggest sort of criteria and one that takes some time to figure out, particularly as people are self-employed and as people have multiple jobs. So, sometimes it can take some time to produce all that documentation and look through that. And Clay, sorry, I don't, if other people I'm not seeing the chat for whatever reason. So if someone has a question, will you let me know and in the chat, I'll happy to answer it.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, thanks.
Some people are asking if you can make this full screen because your font's a little smaller.
All right. All right. Let me see. I'm sorry, everyone. Typically,
if you press escape to kind of get out of that presenter mode, and then go to view and then full screen.
Where is that?
That's a good question. I don't know. I can see it. I guess if you just kind of make that PowerPoint like your whole.
Is this better now?
Yeah, that's much better.
Okay, sorry about that, everyone.
That's okay.
Okay. Well, given that, would it be helpful if I went back through the floor plans are available, so if anyone needs them, just ask. I'm not going to go back through them. Happy to send them. I think they're on our website. Apologies that was not bigger. Really sorry about that. Okay, so we've got the 50% units. The income limits are by household size, okay, not by the unit you're applying for. It's by household size. So if you have more people in your household, you can make more money and still qualify for this program. There's no minimum income for the 50% units, just a maximum. So it goes from 51,950 for a household size of 1 up to 97,950 for a household size of 8, and sort of moves incrementally between those for household sizes of 2 through 7. Income is for all household members who will be part of the application, who will be living in the unit as their primary residence, and certainly anyone who will be taking title to the home. And what we're talking about here, ladies and gentlemen, is the gross income, okay, for W-2 employees, okay? If you're self-employed, you got your own business, what we're talking about is net income. So you'd have to fill out a profit and loss, and we'd look at your business expenses, and the applicable for the net income is what we'd be applying as against the applicable income limit here. But for everyone else, if you're employed by someone else or another company, by a company, it's your gross income, your pre-tax, okay, that we're applying against these income limits for everyone in the household, whether they're on, certainly everyone on the deed and everyone who'll be living there as their primary residence. Then we got the 50 to 80% units. So here we've got an extra column because here we're talking about a range of incomes. So you have to make, yep, Anton, 1 second. Give me 1 second, I'll call on you. So we've got the minimum income required, which is this column here, and then the maximum allowed. So this is a window. You got to make, if you're a household size of 1, you got to make something more than 51,951 and something less than 82,950. Okay. And then Anton, give me 1 more second. We got the 80 to 120% units. And again, you'll see these numbers sort of pick up right where the maximum left off. So, at the 80%, someone could make this. That was the maximum. Well, for that same household size of 1, this is now a minimum. It's $1 more than that maximum. 82,951 can make up to 125,412. These are the workforce units. Okay, I think I saw a question from an Anton or Anon. Is there still a question?
Yes.
Yeah.
So there's just me, my wife, and my household. But in case I get the house, can I get my older parents living with me, or it's restricted?
Well, if they're going to be living with you, they need to be part of the application. And they would also need to be, I assume they would also need to be, on the deed and title and mortgage to the home. And the reason for that is to sort of prevent households from, and certainly not everyone would intend to do this or mean to do this, but some households might say, hey, I'm including my parents because they're going to help me meet the criteria to be eligible, but they're not going to take title or anything like that. They're not really going to have any skin in the game. I just sort of put them on my application to help me be eligible, but maybe they'll live there, maybe they won't. Anyway, that's not what you're asking, but it is related. So anyone who's going to be living full-time in the unit, whether it's your wife, parents-in-law, they need to be included on the application. And if they're an adult, they do need to be, on the purchase and sale and the mortgage and the deed. Does that answer it, Anton, or do you have an additional question?
Yes, and the last question. So in the end of the whole process, like a few years later, can they still not move in, or they can?
Well, so yeah, it's a good question. I mean, really, you should apply with the household composition that you think intends to live there. Okay, that you think intends to live there. Now, if you apply with your wife and at some future date, your parents move in with you, I'm not sure there's a whole lot we can do about that. And once you've closed on the home, we won't be involved any longer. And they could probably end up just moving in with you. They wouldn't have any sort of title to the home or anything like that, which they might be totally okay with. So, I think the best answer I can give is you should apply with the people who you think intend to live in the unit. And at some future date, it's your home, and you're going to have some options about what you do with it, including potentially having other people live there. Does that answer it?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Dave, there was also a question in the chat. Is there a minimum or maximum for the household size?
Yeah, good question. No, I mean, well, there's no minimum. I think, Clay, I'm guessing that you guys, when you sell these units, aren't really looking at how many people are in the household. That's really more of a concept that comes up with rental, and management companies want to make sure that they don't have a household that exceeds state sanitary code. I think with sales, I don't think developers are looking at that, but Clay, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, not that I'm aware. I think, it would all probably go back to the state sanitary code.
Yeah. I mean, so, I guess to flesh that out a little further, I mean, we only show income limits up to 8 because typically it's 2 people per bedroom is pretty standard. If you have more than that, we'll take a look and let you know if we think there's going to be an issue. State sanitary code can be a little bit tricky to discern because it's not only based on the total square footage, but it's also based on sort of habitable square footage and bedrooms and stuff like that. So anything under 8 is certainly fine. If it's more than 8, put that in your application and we'll let you know if we think, that there might be an issue. If it's close to that, I'm sure it's probably fine. These are big units. So I think it wouldn't be an issue. Any other questions there?
I have a different question, if that one's
Please.
answered.
Go ahead.
So I was wondering, is there any preference or weight given to family size or household size when it comes to the lottery? So for example, is there a preference to a larger family size that would be able to occupy all 4 rooms as opposed to a single individual who would not have enough members to fill all the rooms?
Wow, that's an excellent question, and absolutely there is. So I'm going to share something else now. When you complete this is the application. This is the 4th page of the application, maybe which you may have seen. On the 4th page, you are asked, what's your household type? And you're going to go through here and check off whichever one applies to you. And we've organized them from, number of persons, but not all households with the same number of persons will be the same type, which is what's over here. So Christian, there is a priority for larger household types who need all of the bedrooms over households who do not need all of the bedrooms. The highest priority is for a type 4. So if you're an 8-person, 7-person, 6-person, or 5-person household, you're going to be a type 4 household. You will get priority as compared to type 3, type 2, or type 1 households. You could also be a type 4 household in this scenario. So yeah, great question. And yes, household type, i.e. number of people in your household and number of bedrooms that the program says you need, is of very great weight when we organize the waiting lists and establish priority for moving forward. Does that answer it?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yep. So make sure to answer that question correctly so you don't deprive yourself of a priority that you should get, and don't answer it incorrectly trying to get a priority that you shouldn't get, because if you do that, you'll get dropped to the bottom and you will not do yourself any service. So okay, so those are the income limits. And again, income, we're talking about all of the household members with the exception of minors under 18 years old, or full-time students who are dependents. We only count $480 of any income such a person might have. Above that, it doesn't count. All right. Again, this is all in the application and the info pack, so don't feel like you've got to be scribbling furiously, taking down notes. It's all right there. When you submit your application, you do need a mortgage pre-approval if a mortgage is required. It may not be if you're applying for a workforce unit, because there's no asset limitation for these workforce units. The workforce units being these, okay, the 80 to 120% units. And there'll be a question on what your assets are. But if you're like most people and you do not, applying for these opportunities, if you're not going to be, buying it cash and you need you're going to need a loan, then you will need a pre-approval that you'll need to supply with your application. In our information packet and application, we do direct you to the MHP1 website, which has a list of lenders who participate in that program, which is sort of the gold standard of affordable housing mortgage products. You are free to get whatever product you like or want. So if you have an uncle or an aunt or friend who's in the business and you want to go with them, you are 100% free to do so. But let me just say, going to a lender who has experience with affordable housing, I think is in your best interest. There are some conditions contained in the deed riders to these units that restrict how they get used and limit the amount that you can resell them for. And if a lender doesn't really know about those or doesn't have experience with them, they may offer you a product or a pre-approval now, and potentially even a commitment later, And only on the eve of closing, they might say, wait a second, we got a problem here. This isn't actually going to work. You know, there's some conditions in this deed rider that got uncovered during underwriting, and now we got a problem. So moral of the story is you can use whoever you like, but I do strongly recommend that you go to a lender with affordable housing experience, so that you get a pre-approval and ultimately a commitment that is got the best chance of succeeding and holding up for your closing. Again, that website's in the information packet on the page that discusses the mortgage criteria. You can even pull that page out of the information packet and bring it with you to a lender. Not a bad idea. Let me just show you which one that is too. So it's this one right here. This is page 9 of the information packet. Again, available on our website. I can make a copy of this. You bring it right into a lender and say, hey, I'm looking for a loan. It's going to need to meet these criteria. You know, is this something that you can offer? Okay, you can't have a financial interest in the development or be a related party. Okay, that's not something that comes up often, but if you're Clay's brother or, you know, whatever, unfortunately, he's a great guy, but you won't be able to buy one of these affordable units or workforce units. You buy one of the market rate ones, they don't have that restriction, but in the affordable and workforce programs, they do. Or if you're an investor in this, I don't think that really ever comes up, but if you were, get some financial interest, that is also a disqualifying factor. Like I think I mentioned a second ago, there is an asset limitation for the affordable units only, $75,000. For the workforce units, there's not. Now, let me just pause for a second in case anyone's scratching their head and saying, why is that? Well, the reason why that is because the affordable units are part of the what's called the LIP LAU program, which is overseen by a state agency. EOHLC is their acronym, and they've got a whole affordable housing program with guidelines that go on for 90+ pages and years of sort of adding to and developing those guidelines. And one of the very clear limitations is that buyers of affordable units can only have an asset amount of up to $75,000. Now, the workforce units are not governed by that same program. Okay, they're entirely overseen by the town. And also, workforce units are historically much harder to find households for. Okay, that's based on our many years of doing this. There is more demand we've found for 50 and 80% units. And so during the approval process, you know, we discussed with Eastland if there were certain ways we could make the barrier to entry for the workforce units a little bit easier. And removing that asset limitation was one of them. Okay, again, in most respects, the criteria and everything else is sort of operating in parallel and the same, but it was an area where we felt we could do that, try and open up the pool a little bit. Also, the prices are, you know, relatively high, and this was something we wanted to do to try and get households for those units, which, by the way, right now, you know, we've got some approved lottery households for the 50 and 80% units. We've got some applicants for the 50 and 80% units. We do not have any approved households or applicants for the workforce unit yet. Okay, we hope that changes, but those are sort of historically just harder to find buyers or renters, as the case may be. Okay, so I'm going to stop there on that, move on to the next slide. Just talk a little bit, and this gets really fleshed out in the application. So, you know, there's bullet by bullet questions about different income and asset sources. And when you complete the application, you'll see exactly what might be required to document a specific income or asset source. So I won't sort of dwell on this too long, but just sort of quickly, you know, when we're talking about income, we're talking about wages. You have to provide, you know, your 5 most recent pay stubs if you're employed by someone else. You're going to have to do a profit and loss statement for the current year if you're self-employed, and last 2 years of tax returns if you're self-employed. If you don't have those, you'd have to do a prior year's self-employment profit and loss statement. But income is not just restricted to wages. You know, it can include other benefits like unemployment compensation. or workman's compensation, or if you're getting Social Security or child support statements, child support. You might be getting alimony, child support. You might be getting periodic payments from friends and family. That's one that always kind of throws people for a loop. But if it's regular and recurring, every 2 weeks, every month, someone gives you money, that counts as income. So it's not just so it's not just your wages. We're looking at all the various sources of income that people have and counting that against the income limits for the program. For assets, again, we've got this limitation for the affordable units. That's the 50% and the 50 to 80% units. Assets also include gifts, for a down payment. Someone's going to be helping you with the down payment. That counts towards the asset limitation. We're looking at your checkings and savings accounts. Maybe you have a CD account. We do look at the net cash value of like a 401k or retirement account. Now, some people look at that and say, well, hey, wait a second, I'm only 35 years old or 40 years old, and I'm not planning on touching that money for a long, long time. But the reality is even though you may not be planning to do so, in most cases you can, if you actually wanted to. You pay a penalty, and we take that into account. So we'd be looking at the net cash value after the penalty is assessed. But that does get counted towards the asset limitation. And you could get a letter from the plan administrator that says, so and so has an IRA with this amount of money in it, and if they were to withdraw it today, this would be the penalty, and that they would have to pay for early withdrawal, and the resultant amount is what we'd be counting against the assets. And there are other assets as well. Okay, I will say these, we're not counting like tangible assets, like cars or jewelry or collectibles or whatever. That stuff we're not asking about or interested in. But there are many other sources of assets that people have. So when you complete the application, just go through it bullet by bullet, and if something doesn't apply to you, check off that's not applicable. And if it does, you're just going to have to provide the documentation that is required for that asset. Okay. Let me hold on for a second. I see that there's some questions. I think, Clay, we've answered some, and then Monique's question: what if there are no applicants for the workforce tier? Will those homes be changed to affordable? Good question. They will not. So what will happen, Monique, is if there aren't any applicants for those units, then after the lottery, those will be made available on a first come, first served basis. Households can submit applications to SEB directly. There won't be another lottery. Well, there will be for the future units, but for these two workforce units, there's not going to be another lottery. And we just take them as they come in. And when someone's, complete and eligible for one of those, we'd move them forward. And then there's my periodic payments offset my high rent and I won't need them. I'm afraid I'm not totally sure I understand what that is asking. So if you want to jump in and tell me, I'll be happy to engage with you on that. Or if you want, yep, go ahead. Yep, Samsung, you there?
Looks like they're muted if they're trying to say something.
Huh. It doesn't show as muted on my screen.
Hi, can you hear me?
There we go.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, so I get periodic payments from my parents who help pay because my rent is so high
Right.
right now. But the goal is to not need them anymore, and they won't continue if I get the lottery. So the payments would put me over the limit.
Right.
So I'm just wondering how do you project?
That's a great question. So typically the rule is we can't account for future changes in income that haven't yet happened. But what I think you should do is get a letter from your parents that says, this is how much we provide. Here's how often we provide it, and here is the purpose of providing it. And once that purpose no longer exists, we will discontinue providing it. If you provide that, I think that we may be able to discount that amount and not count it towards the income limit. But that's where I would start.
Okay, thank you.
You got it. Okay. Let me go to the next page here. All right. So let me talk a little bit about the lottery. So, you know, as Jennifer.
Yes, I'm kind of like in the same situation as that woman, but what if the amount vary every month? How do you go about reporting that as an income?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, you know, in those cases, we have to take your year to date and the average of your last 5 pay stubs and take whatever is higher. So in your case, what should you do? You should put what you understand your income to be, and we'll take a look at your year to date, like I said, and your average of your last 5, and the higher of that is what we're gonna have to count as your income.
Okay.
Okay. I don't see any other questions, so let's get back to this next slide. You know, so as applications come in, you know, if you're incomplete, which many are, and that's okay, you know, we'll let you know. We'll send you a bulleted list of what's outstanding. If you're eligible, we'll send you a lottery number. It'll be in the form of A dot blank blank blank, which has absolutely no relevance. You know, don't think because you're A dot 001, you're number 1 in the lottery. You're not. You're just the first household who submitted a complete application to us. It's just a way of keeping everyone's name out of the lottery and keeping it anonymous. Okay, so hold on to that number. That's what we're going to use when we do the actual lottery, which will be on January 24th at 6 p.m. via Zoom, just like this. Okay, we'll put all the lottery numbers in a box, draw them out, and create the waiting list. Now, one of the things that people often get confused about, or just because of the way lotteries are usually run and everything else, whether it's, you know, whatever lottery most of us have ever heard of, there's usually winners, right? Like you pick one number or you pick a couple numbers and those are the winners and everyone else is a loser. But that's not how these lotteries work. In these lotteries, everyone who gets one of these A numbers is in the lottery and everyone gets picked and everyone gets a position on the waiting list. So the lottery is not picking winners and losers. It's just creating an order of priority. So the real question isn't, did I win the lottery or did I lose the lottery? The question is, where am I on the waiting list? Am I number 1 or number 5 or number 10? How many people are ahead of me? That's really what we're sort of figuring out. And like I think Christian asked earlier, there is priority in the lottery for type 4 households who the program would say need 4 bedrooms. So what that also means is that when we do the actual drawing, like if you're a single person and you apply, which you certainly can, and you're the first household's number, you're the first number that is drawn in the lottery, you're not going to be number 1 on the waiting list, most likely, if there are any type 2 or type 3 or type 4 households in the lottery. So we have to take into account these priorities when we create the waiting lists or create the order of priority. Now, it's certainly still better to be drawn earlier than later, but again, it's not the end all be all. Let me say as well, for the 2 workforce units, there is a priority for households who live or work locally or have kids attending the Bellingham schools. The town wanted to have a local preference for the affordable units, but they didn't. Anyway, it didn't end up happening. We didn't get the approval from EOHLC, so there isn't a local preference for the affordable units. But in either case, you know, whether you have local preference or not, you can and should still apply. Household type is a weightier factor on the wait list creation anyway. Okay, so once we run the lottery, you don't have to be there. I mean, you certainly can. It'll probably take, and I don't know, 10, 15 minutes to do it. It's pretty quick. it's a little unclear in real time what it means because of these priorities, and you don't know who else applied and what household type they were and stuff like that. So, you know, as you're watching in real time, you're not going to necessarily be able to say, hey, I'm going to be in this spot on the waiting list or that spot on the waiting list. You know, at most you're going to be able to say my number was drawn 5th, but I don't know exactly what that means yet. But that's okay, because we will send you the waiting lists probably the night of the lottery or at the worst January 25th by midday. We'll just use your lottery numbers, so it'll all be anonymous. You can just see, okay, you know, I'm number whatever on the waiting list. And then from there, we then have to send top households files to the monitoring agent. So for the affordable units, that's EOHLC, the state agency, or for the workforce units, that's the town, for their final green light. And once we get that, then we can turn you over to the Eastland team. You can go about reserving a unit. You have to put down a $500 deposit. Then from there, you'd move to signing a purchase and sale agreement. Certainly by that point, you know, we recommend that you do get an attorney involved. It's not required, but you know, if you're buying a home, obviously a huge purchase, you do want to have your you know, best interest looked after, and having an attorney can certainly help with that. They can help you understand the deed rider and what that means, and certainly the purchase and sale itself and what to expect in the home buying process. And ultimately, you'll need to, you know, unless you're doing a cash purchase, you'll need to get a mortgage commitment and ultimately, you know, close on the unit. You do need to undergo a second screening about a month before your closing date. And that's because you do need to maintain program eligibility all the way up through closing. Okay, so it doesn't happen often, but we have seen cases where someone's eligible for the lottery, and a month, you know, 5 months later, before they're closing, on the good side, they've gotten a promotion at work or taken a new job and they're making more money. But on the bad side, now they make too much money and they're not eligible for the program anymore. So you do have to be eligible all the way up through closing. And Jennifer, you still have your hand up. Do you have another question, or is that a remnant from the last one?
It's still from the last one,
Oh,
sorry.
that's okay. That's okay. Just want to make sure I wasn't missing it. All right. Oh, I think I just covered all this. Let me see here. Yeah, so you know, you'd be in touch with Clay's team. I don't know if it's probably not Clay himself, but someone on his team to, you know, see the units. Oh, and one thing I want to say there too is, like if you're the #1 household on the 50% AMI list, then you can choose from the available 50% AMI units. And if you're the #1 household on the 50 to 80% list, then you can choose from the units available on that list. And once you've reserved one of those units, then the next household behind you would get to choose from what's remaining. So the advantage of being higher on the wait list, and in this case, let's say the #1 household on a particular wait list, is you get to say, you know, which of these units do you like best, and which one are you going to reserve? And then households behind you would get to choose from what's remaining. Okay, I think I covered the rest of that. So I will, I'm going to stop sharing for a second. Oh, okay, well, hold on here. Now I got a few more questions in the chat. So Ollie's, so there's a question about, in the process of separation, can I apply? If I can, do I have to include my wife and kids? So yes, you can apply. You know, the divorce is going to need to be finalized before you can move forward in reserving a home. And that's because we need to know the final sort of allocation of assets, and custody, any, you know, child support or alimony and things like that to determine eligibility. But you can apply now, but just know you'd have to finalize it before, you know, if you reach the top of a wait list and you're next in line, it would have to be finalized at that point so we can assess eligibility. You can only include your kids if you will have at least joint custody. which may not be decided until the separation is finalized. There's a question here from Andre. Is there a backyard space or fencing? Clay, can I turn that one to you?
Yep, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was checking the plans behind me. So these lots are anywhere from about 16,000 square feet up to a little over half an acre. So you'll get a decent sized front yard and backyard. There is no fencing. I don't see any reason why you couldn't put that in if you wanted to, but it does not come with the house at closing.
Thank you. Okay, so the question here's coming. If we don't qualify for the 120% workforce units, but we have local preference, do we still say we have local preference on the application? Yeah, might as well say that you have it, but it won't get you any priority for the affordable units, but might as well just still include it. When do we expect sales closings to be? Clay, unless the delivery dates have changed, I mean, I think the units are starting to be ready now and close to now. So, I think, but you're not, no one's gonna be, ready to close for a few more months because the lottery's not for another, till later in January. Then you got to get final certification from the monitoring agent. Then you got to reserve the home. Then you got to sign a purchase and sale. Then you got to get mortgage commitment, and then you'll be ready to close. So I think, yeah, go ahead, Clay.
I think in terms of construction, I know for the first phase of the lottery, the houses are basically at the kind of rough-in stage. So the frame is up. It's got a roof, it's got siding, it's got windows. From the outside, it's fully complete. It's kind of just like, putting down flooring and installing cabinets and that sort of thing. So I think, as Dave had said, a handful of months here to kind of let the process play out. We'll be ready to close more or less on day one that everybody else gives you the go ahead.
Great. That's awesome. All right, a few more questions rolling in here. Okay, Ollie, if I apply to, I have to include my wife. So if you're going through separation, so I would not include them at this point. But again, if that separation is not final, it's going to have to be finalized before you can reserve a unit. So if you come to the top of a waiting list and that separation is not finalized, you get dropped back down to the bottom. I wouldn't include her right now though, since you're going through the separation. Lori asking about, are we able to get the Zoom meeting slides? Yeah, we will, if I can figure it out. Usually my colleague Catherine does these sessions. I should be able to get the Zoom recorded and put on our website, hopefully by tomorrow. If that's not the case, Lori and anyone else, email info@SEB Housing. Again, that's info@SEB Housing. I'd be happy to just send you the slideshow too. But I hope to have the whole Zoom meeting presentation recorded and on our website, I hope by tomorrow. Okay, I have my hand. Oh yeah, sorry. So sorry, Samsung. I just have you as Samsung. It's so impersonal, but I don't know your name. You got your hand up.
No, that's okay. That's okay. It's me. This is me. I just wanted to make sure you saw it because I had asked a question earlier and it didn't get answered. And so that one was that first question was the 6 upcoming units that are going to be available for the next year. You mentioned that they were workforce. Are any of those going to be affordable or no?
Oh yeah, 5 of them are going to be affordable. What was it? 3 at
Okay. So there'll be 2 more affordables in the future, essentially.
More than that. More than
okay.
that. Yeah.
Okay.
So right now, there's going to be another lottery for future units. I don't know exactly when that's going to be, probably a year from now or something like that. But for right now, we've got 7 units, 2 are workforce, 2 are 50 to 80%, and 3 are at 50%. Yep.
Okay, I'm sorry. So more specifically, I meant the 50% ones in the future. There'll be more of those as well. Because earlier you mentioned it was just workforce. You mentioned workforce in the 6 future ones, so I just wanted to make sure there'd be 50% AMI ones as well in the future.
I'm just trying to remind myself. Clay, do you remember offhand how many 50% there are total? I'd have to look.
It's 5, 5, and 6.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. That's right.
So-
Okay.
So,
Okay. So there will be, okay. And then my other question pertains to divorce. So I know you said the divorces have to be finalized by the time you reserve the home. So what are we looking at as far as a timeline between when the lottery ends on the 24th of January and when you reserve a home? Because we're working with an attorney right now and the courts are tied up until people aren't getting court dates until March for finalizing of divorces.
right. So it's a good question. So it depends on where you are on the waiting list, right? So if
Yeah.
you're really high on the waiting list, you might need to have that information pretty soon, like in early February or something like that. If you're lower on the waiting list, it's going to take some more time because we need to move through the households ahead of you. I know there was an email about this very subject that came in today, and I don't know if that was from you or someone else similarly situated. And
It wasn't me, no.
okay, so there was someone saying that they were going through a divorce and they had worked out the details with a mediator, I think. And I'm just waiting to speak tomorrow with our sort of lead compliance person to see if there's any type of exception or that we can make there.
Yeah, so I guess that kind of does line up a little bit. So we've been working with mediation for the last like month or so, and we will come up with a signed mediation, and the mediation includes payouts, like all assets, obviously, and then child support is a big one. So if that's signed and the divorce is filed in court, but not necessarily, and the mediation is signed, I don't see how it would be any different than someone's parents paying the money and you guys accepting a letter saying it's not going to continue or that something's not finalized. So it seems to, I just want clarification because I've talked to people at SEB and no one really has an answer and it's kind of important. So I'm just wondering how I get there. Because it's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, totally. Let's do this. Why don't you, and I'm happy to give you my direct email. It's David at SEB Housing. And
Okay.
I think the reason you're maybe having a hard time getting an answer is because the typical rule is, like I said, you'd have to have it finalized, but
Yeah.
you know, where the courts are jammed up, and there's, you know, a mediator and other sort of apparent agreement involved, we may be able to kind of create an exception. And I'm just not the person who's making
Okay.
that decision, but I am going to speak with them this week, hopefully, and sort of get that ironed out.
Okay, great. Thank you.
That boat, feel free to email me directly, and as soon as we kind of have an answer on that, I'm happy to let you know. Again, it's David at sebhousing.com.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate it.
And then there was a question, income plus assets have to be below 75,000. No, so the assets for the affordable units need to be below 75,000. The income is listed on right there, this page. So MJ Watt, this was your question. So the assets for the affordable units is 75,000. The income limits are listed here. These are all in the, you know, it's in the info pack, it's in the application. So don't worry about kind of memorizing this or writing this down. Just take a look at the application, see what your household size is, and you'll see what the relevant income limit or range is. Okay. Okay, I think I'm caught up on the chat. So let me just. All right, and then let's see. Ollie, do you have your hand up?
I just need, please, a clarification about the workforce. I mean, houses. I'm really interested, and I first time I heard about it. I need more clarification, please.
On what aspect? Can you be a little bit more specific?
Yeah, just what the requirement to apply for it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, so here are your income limits, right? Or I'm not sharing anymore. Hold on. Let me share my screen. All right, Ollie, so can you see my screen now with the different income limits listed on it? So we've got, these are the workforce income limits right here, the minimum and maximum. There is no asset limitation. So, you know, you will not be screened in or screened out based on what you have in your, you know, checking and savings account, or if you have, you know, if you own stocks, bonds, that kind of thing. There isn't a limitation for the workforce unit. So the biggest sort of criteria is meeting the income limits. And I apologize, I really should have mentioned this before. I neglected to, but for all units, you do need to be a first-time home buyer, which means you have not owned a home within the past 3 years. There is an exception for that if you are over 55 years old, or if you are a single parent or a displaced homemaker, which would be someone who worked primarily in the home over the last several years, not for money, owned a home with their partner and no longer does. So there are a few exceptions to that rule, but in general, this opportunity is for first-time home buyers, meaning, again, you have not owned a home in the past 3 years. I'm trying to think what else, Ali. I think, you know, if you haven't looked at it yet, take a look at the information packet in the application. There's a lot of details there about the workforce homes. If there are other specific questions that you have, I'm happy to address those. I think I didn't, let me mention the sales prices. Apologize, I know I touched on that at the beginning, but the 50% units, sales price is 182,200. For the 50 to 80% units, the sales price is 320,300. And for the workforce units, Ollie, it's, and everyone else, $509,100. Okay, and again, like I said, you don't have to memorize the income limits. They're on the very first page of the application. They're in the info pack as well. Okay, Jennifer, you have your hand up? Jennifer, you're on mute. I've just asked you to
That
unmute.
might be left over. It never turned
left
off.
over? Okay.
It's still, I still can't put
Oh,
my
okay.
hand
Sorry,
up.
sorry.
Sorry.
Okay, I think Anton's hand is new. Anton, is your question new?
Yes, and I think there is a same question on the chat about deduction from income. The student loan debt, is it deductible or it's not? We don't count it.
Oh, it's a good question. How do we count loans? So you're asking if the student loans count as income?
I actually, if I can deduct the student loan debt.
Oh, because you're paying them back, you mean?
Yes.
No, no, you can't. Sorry. Any other questions? Let's see. There's one in the chat. Mimi, if I have monthly child expense or debt, can that be deducted? It cannot. Okay, so typically debts, expenses are not able to be deducted from income. Okay. I just want to touch on a few other things quickly, but obviously if people have questions, continue to ask them. Just a few things on the application. You know, we ask you which type of 4-bedroom, which income tier you're interested in. You know, I would just say on that, if you think there's any chance you're interested in it, check it off. You can check more than one. You can check all 3 if you want. The reason for that is if you don't check it, you won't be entered onto that waiting list. If you do check it, you will be, and worst case scenario, either you're not eligible or maybe you are eligible, but you later decide, hey, you know what, I don't actually want an 80% unit. I'm going to kind of hold out and see if I can get a 50% unit. So I would just say, you know, there's really no downside to being more inclusive when you're checking off these boxes. I think there is a downside if you don't check off a box and later say, you know, I would have taken an 80% unit if I could have gotten one, but I didn't check that off. I only checked 50%. So that's that. We talked about the household types before. Yeah, I think that's actually it that I wanted to touch on. Are there other questions? Other questions? And again, it's okay. This is by no means your last chance to ask questions. You know, you can always email us and you may realize you have questions as you start completing the application. I do want to say something, this is kind of where I started, but our office is going to be closed the last week of December. So all the more reason, get your application in soon. Submit it this week, submit it next week, so that you have time, you know, if stuff is missing, which it often is. Let's see, are there any more? I don't think there's, okay.
I do.
Yep, go ahead.
You said something about checking off which also income limit you're applying for. If you're not sure where you fall, if you fall in the 50% or the 50 to 80, can you check both?
Definitely, and you should.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. And Lori, I think I saw your question in the chat. You have one daughter who's 20 years old and in college. She gets work study. Do I need to include that as income as well? You should include that as income as well, but if she's a full-time student and a dependent, only $480 is going to count. Anything above that will not count towards the income limit.
So
And
what form of,
obviously, you should only include it if she's going to be living in the unit. I mean, if she's not going to be living in the unit, then you wouldn't include her at all.
well, she's a junior now, will be graduating next year,
Yep.
2025, I should say. I think she is going to be living with me, but she is a full-time student, so she does live on campus. I think my question is more, what form of documentation do I need to submit for her?
Yeah, so there's a question on that in the application. You need to provide evidence that she's a student, which is what is that? I'm trying to remember. Something from the registrar's office that shows that she's a student there.
Yep, I have a transcript for her.
Yep. And then I don't know exactly what work study, how that gets documented. You know, if it comes in the form of something similar to like a pay stub or whatever, I'm not sure. But you know, I'm betting there's, well, I don't know how they set it up, if it's sort of like here's the maximum that can be earned and here's the rate, but do you have anything like that, or can she provide that? We just need to know what she's getting paid, you know, how often and how much.
I know she gets paid bi-weekly and it's not much since it's work study.
Yeah.
I think they're only allowed to work a max number of hours, I think anywhere from 10 to 20 hours.
Mhm.
So I think, yeah, I think I just need to get clarity on that from her on how, like, what is because I don't know if there's pay stubs. I don't know what kind of proof that I need to submit for that.
Okay, yeah, ask her how that gets documented. I'm sure it comes in some form, like a pay stub or something like that.
My other question, and I think someone else also has this question as well too, is that she does get a summer job where she does receive a stipend, but that's temporary work and it's not permanent. Do I submit that as well too as part of the income?
So she
'Cause
worked.
I don't know if I have to, give her, do I have to give tax like on my taxes or something? I don't know.
So she's had that summer job before and she's likely going to have it again.
Or an internship this summer. Yes, that's her goal.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, so in that case, we would need documentation for that job. You know, if she's not going to work there anymore, she would need to, you know, we need some evidence that she's no longer going to, you know, work there any longer. And we need, you know, you can provide a statement from her and the employer saying that, you know, what her last date of work was, and that she's not going to be working there again. But if she may be, then you know, we'd sort of count that extrapolating out for the future.
Thank you.
Yep. If my daughter doesn't work now, she's a full-time student, do you count her prior income? So there's a question in the application about this too. So if it is not, if they're not going to be working there any longer, you can get a statement to that effect, and the application will tell you the acceptable ways of demonstrating that. If you can get a statement saying, this was a prior job and it is not going to continue in the future, then we wouldn't count it. But we will need some evidence that it is done and over with, and she's not going to be taking that job up in the future. Does that answer it? Are there, okay, are there other questions?
It looks like Ali has his hand up, although.
Oh,
Yeah.
Ollie, do you have a question?
No, I just forget. Thank you.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. Clay, anything else you want to sort of add in before it looks like we might be wrapping up here?
No, I just want to thank everybody for applying, and thanks to Dave for all the hard work so far. I wish you all the best of luck throughout the lottery process, and just thanks for attending and giving all your questions and involvement today.
That's great. And thank you, Clay, for being here. That was super helpful. And folks, again, if you think of a question tomorrow or in the future, don't hesitate to reach out. I know a few of you are going to message me directly, and I'll get back to you as soon as we have an answer on the sort of pending divorce stuff. And yeah, anything else, reach out, get those applications in early. This is an awesome opportunity, and we hope to see as many applications from you as we can. All right, folks. I hope you all have a great night, and thanks for joining. Good night.
Thank you, Dave.
Yeah, thanks.